Hi everybody, I'm Pia from Stitches and Scraps. Today I'm going to show you how to fix simple mistakes in your knitting without having to frog or rip out all of your work using a crochet hook. The first step is to get to your mistake, meaning to the stitch directly above where your mistake is. Now this little purl bump that shouldn't be here is my mistake, and that is in this column of stitches. So if I follow that up, that means I have to get to this stitch here. Now if you want, you can mark that stitch with a stitch marker so that you know when you've gotten to it. I'm going to go ahead without the stitch marker. To get to that stitch, you can either start knitting your next row or round and stop when you get to the stitch that you want to fix, or you can just slip the stitches over to your other needle like this. Just like you normally would slip them. I'm going to slip them back later. This is just to get to where my mistake is. So there's my mistake right there. That is the stitch that I want. So I'm going to be dropping this stitch. So I'm going to take it off of this needle. I know this is the part that makes everybody nervous. And then I'm going to pull these needles through so that all the rest of the stitches are on the cord and the needles and the cords are out of my way. Okay, I've moved my needles out of my way. So now I can focus on just this one stitch here that I want to drop down and fix. So you can see it's already dropped one row. I'm going to continue to let it drop all the way down past where this mistake is. And I can help that along with my fingers or with my crochet hook, whatever is easier. Just let it drop down carefully and slowly until you've gone past where your mistake is. If you have a more slippery yarn, this will go much faster. Okay, I'm getting close. So now I want to start going really carefully. That stitch was fine. This stitch is where my mistake is. So I'm going to pull that out. And then before it goes anywhere, I'm going to grab this stitch and hold it. So this stitch is now safe. And I have a ladder above it of all of those dropped stitches from all the rows above. When you spread it out like this, you can really clearly see each rung of this ladder that we're going to climb back up to fix this stitch. So let's do that one row at a time. This next row, and actually several rows after, are all knit stitches. So let's look at how to pick up a knit stitch. Okay, first of all, I want to make sure that my hook is going into my stitch straight. So if I lay my stitch down flat, I want my hook to be going from towards me to the back to do a knit stitch, just like this. Okay, it's going from towards me towards the back, or from me to the back. It's going away from me into the stitch. Now we're going to find the ladder that we want to do first, and this is where if you spread the stitches out, you can see the ladders a little bit better. So this ladder here that this stitch is connected to, you can see it going into this stitch right here. If I pull on it, you'll see that it tugs on this stitch right here. So this ladder, this stitch that's on my needle is connected to this row here. So the next one is this one, which is connected to this row. So that's the ladder I want to use. And for a knit stitch, I'm going to pick it up from behind my stitch. So my stitch is on top of the ladder. The ladder is the working yarn. And just like when you knit a stitch, your working yarn is behind your needle, right? So the working yarn is behind my stitch, and I'm going to pull it through from back to front. And I've made a knit stitch. Now my hook is actually in the perfect position to do another knit stitch. So there's my next ladder, and if I want to be sure, I can pull on it a little bit and see that it's coming out of the next row here. So I grab this next ladder from behind through to the front. Okay, and you can see I'm making knit stitches here. The next one, this one, should also be a knit stitch right there. So I'm going to grab it from behind and pull it through. So let's do that one more time because this last one here is also a knit stitch. See, this one connects to this stitch right here, which is a knit stitch coming out of there. So I'm going to grab it from behind and pull it through. Now before I do that, I want to show you, do you see how this actual yarn is sitting lower than this one? This one is sitting behind the work and this one's sitting on top of the work. That's because this one's a purl. So it's really easy to tell what the neighboring stitches are if they're the same, based on whether it's above the fabric or below the fabric. That's an extra guide to make sure you're doing the right stitch. And if you do the wrong stitch, you can just drop down and fix it, right? Okay, but we've got one more knit, so I'm going to grab it from behind and pull it through towards me. Okay, that's all the knits, and you can see that I've fixed that mistake in the stockinette section. But now I have this, I've got a reverse stockinette section where it's all purls, and then I've got some garter stitch. So how do we fix that? Well, we're going to need to purl with our crochet hook here. So if for a knit, the working yarn is at the back, for a purl, the working yarn needs to be in front. So I'm going to carefully take my hook out of this stitch and move the working yarn to the front, okay? And now for a purl, I'm going to put the hook in the opposite way. So now you can see the working yarn is in front of my work, and like it's on top of my loop, and I'm going to pull that working yarn through from front to back to make a purl. Okay, but now my hook is not in the right place to do another purl, and my next stitch here is a purl. So I have to again take my hook out, move the working yarn to the front, put my hook back in, and grab the yarn to do another purl. And that's a little bit less smooth and easy. Sorry, I'm splitting the yarn here a little bit. But that's a little bit less smooth and easy than it was for the knit stitches, because for the knit stitches we could just keep going, right? Well, I'll show you a trick if you have several purls in a row. Here I only had 2, so it's not that big of a deal. But if you have a situation where you've got like a whole section of purls, turn your work over. From this side, those purls are knits. So from this side, you can grab it and just pull it through like a knit. And then you don't have to worry about repositioning your hook every time. But for the purposes of our tutorial here, I want to make sure you know how to do both knits and purls. So let's look at those two again. So I'm back to having just finished my knit stitches. Let's look at those purls again. To position for a purl, I'm going to move the working yarn in front of my loop, insert my hook from back to front so that I can pull that yarn through from front to back. Okay, and then I have to take my hook out to position the next purl stitch, put my hook in backwards again, and pull the yarn through from front to back, preferably without splitting it. There we go. Okay, and those are my 2 purl stitches. So now I have some garter stitch to do. Let's pull these stitches apart and see what's next. So this next bar is coming out of a knit stitch here. Do you see that? This is the next bar. It's in the back, right? It's behind the work, and it's coming out of this stitch right here, which is a knit stitch. Okay, so I'm going to knit this one, which means I stick my hook in forward through the stitch and pull the working yarn from behind up to the front. And there's a knit stitch. The next one, because this is a garter stitch section, is this purl stitch here. So I have to remove my hook, bring the working yarn to the front over my stitch, insert my hook backwards, and pull the working yarn through from front to back. And now I'm positioned to do a knit stitch, and the next one is a knit. If you can't find the loop, pull your stitches apart. And there's that loop right in the back. There's that ladder. So I'm going to grab my working yarn from behind and pull it through to the front to knit. And then for my very last purl, I'm going to remove my loop from my hook, move the working yarn in the front, pull it through from front to back. Now I have my finished stitch all worked back up again with no mistake in that stockinette section. So the very last step is going to be to put this stitch right back onto my needle, and in this case my left hand needle here. And make sure that you put it on correctly. The right leg of the stitch should be in front. So this is the right leg of the stitch here, and this is the left leg of the stitch there. Do you see that? Right leg and left leg. So I want to make sure when I put it on that the right leg goes in the front. Okay? So that it's not backwards. And then because if I had been working the stitches, I would be positioned right now to just continue working across my row, but I slipped the stitches. My working yarn is back here. So to get things back to where I can start the next row or round, I'm just going to slip everything back onto my non-working needle. Okay. And I now am ready, mistake all fixed, now ready to knit the next row. If you have any weirdness with tension, a little bit of that will work itself out in blocking, but you can also pull at the stitches next to it to kind of even things out. Over time, you'll get really good at keeping this tension even when you do this, but in the beginning, it can be a little bit hard to get that tension even, but just a little wiggling should get it nice and settled for you. Now, this was a very simple pattern of just knits and purls. You can use this same technique for more complex patterns like cables or lace, increases and decreases, all of that, but it gets progressively more complex, and I'm not covering all those details in this video. Just for a quick overview, what you would do is you would drop down all the involved stitches. So suppose I had a 5-stitch cable here. I would drop down all 5 of those stitches to where the mistake was, and then work all 5 of the stitches back up again, row by row, crossing them wherever I needed to for the cable. That ladder in the back is your working yarn, so you basically use that working yarn to work each row of your cable back up again. Same thing with lace. You can make yarn overs with that working yarn. You can work decreases by pulling the working yarn through 2 stitches. But like I said, it does get more complex, and it takes more time with the more complex patterns. So if you have a more complex pattern where you have really long rows or really long rounds, it might be worth dropping down. Or if you have to drop way down, like lots and lots of rows, it might be worth it. But if it's just a few rows like this for a more complex pattern, I would probably just frog the work and then re-knit it up. You always have to decide whether it's worth the aggravation and the time it's going to take to fix the mistake this way. But that is how you fix simple mistakes in knitting without frogging or ripping out by using a crochet hook. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends, or leave me a comment. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great videos. Thanks for watching.